Well, good morning, everyone, and pleasure to be here, and not only with those of you in the room here, but also those, of course, online, of which I believe there are a considerable number. This summit, very clearly, is about the role of innovative businesses in creating a more prosperous and sustainable economy. So I'd like to talk about some of the opportunities which I foresee over the next 10 or 20 years, but rather than rely on my own crystal ball, as Paul has just said, I'll rely more on the predictions based on the Commission's own analysis. As has just been mentioned, the chief amongst our responsibilities is producing a national infrastructure assessment every 5 years, and these reports set out our view on the biggest strategic requirements for economic infrastructure, so energy, transport, waste and digital, and what interventions the government needs to make to address those needs. Our second assessment was published back in October. It focuses on 3 big issues around which there is a broad consensus, namely how our infrastructure can be modernised to promote productivity and growth and economic growth across all the regions of the UK, support the transition to net zero, and improve climate resilience and the state of the natural environment. This assessment is not a wish list. It's rather a costed programme, designed within a budgetary envelope for public expenditure called the fiscal remit, which is set by the Treasury. And it's currently set at about 1.3% of GDP, or around 30 billion a year. We also have a duty to spell out the level of private investment that we anticipate will be needed to modernise infrastructure and the impact that that is likely to have on households' bills. So this morning I'm going to focus on what we've said about transport networks in particular. Before that, as a quick plug, I might say that my colleague Margaret Reid is speaking later this afternoon on the need to build climate resilience into maintenance and enhancements programmes. So please look out for that session if you're around. Now, why do we care? Why do we care about connecting places in the first place? In the Commission's view, the UK's large city regions are our biggest opportunity to build sustained economic growth that reduces the disparities that we have today between the regions. At present, London is the only major city in the UK that outperforms our average national productivity. That is not the case in comparable countries, where many cities outside the capital have above average productivity. The productivity gap in major English cities is in the tens of billions of pounds per year, and we simply can't afford for that to go on. So we need to build urban density, and we need to encourage industry through better connectivity. To support this, in our assessment, we proposed an investment of 22 billion in urban mass transit over the next 20 years. And we recommended that 2/3 of that 22 billion should be concentrated on schemes for Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds and Manchester. We highlighted those places because of these cities' roles as economic hubs within their regions, but also their specific transport capacity constraints. For instance, our analysis suggested that Birmingham could have 20,000 more people wanting to travel into the city centre during the midweek peak by 2050 than it does today. Beyond those 4 priority cities, we also proposed that the remaining 1/3 of investment should be available to other cities and towns with viable plans that would shift the dial on their local economy. We have to avoid jam spreading, but there may well be a case to expand the reach of public transport networks in places such as Liverpool and Sheffield, where current networks are smaller than the average for comparably sized European cities. Now, core government funding can only get us so far, but as cities will be the primary beneficiaries of better public transport, it's reasonable that they should also contribute to the cost. We think this means giving cities the autonomy to fund as well as find local infrastructure solutions. The Commission does not have a view on the best form of fiscal devolution, but tried and tested ways to increase fiscal devolution include, for example, the business rate retention and land value capture. Indeed, many combined authorities already have the power to do these. And there may well be opportunities for financial services companies to broker deals between innovative SMEs and private funders, for example, in mobility as a service. This might involve linking together different opportunities with varying risk levels to create commercially attractive packages for institutional and maybe even retail investors. And however the funding and finance are arranged, the transport projects themselves, if committed to, will offer myriad opportunities to SMEs to be involved in ensuring that the solutions delivered make the most of the technological possibilities. Another huge area of potential is the world of connected and automated vehicles. The Commission has recently been asked to look at how these technologies can support the UK's long-term economic, social and environmental goals. Many of the people here will no doubt be able to cite the benefits of CAM in various spheres, but we're basically being asked to help define the size of the prize. Government has requested an interim report this summer and a final report early next year. To be clear, we're not looking at the viability of CAM technology itself. Rather, we're exploring what additional policy and infrastructure requirements will be needed beyond the regulatory, safety and legislative framework already being developed by government. We're only at the beginning of this work, and we're working with Zenzik, SMMT and Logistics UK, among others, to help understand the whole area better. But if you're particularly interested in this work, I'd encourage you to take a look at our website and make contact with our team. CAM neatly takes me from urban transport to interurban networks. In our second assessment, the Commission was clear that government's first priority should be to better maintain our existing road and rail networks. Network Rail and National Highways will need to focus an increased proportion of their money on renewing the ageing assets and dealing with climate change impacts. So optimization of our existing assets becomes the name of the game. More broadly, across core infrastructure sectors, it's worth remembering that most assets that will be operating in 2055 have already been built. The technology and innovation that the Connected Places Catapult champions clearly has a huge role to play, whether that is sending robots into sewers or other hard-to-access places to help identify leaks, or building digital twins, as Paul has just mentioned, to monitor and predict performance issues. These things are, of course, already happening. You're going to be talking about them in the next panel discussion on this stage. My apologies for not being here for that, but I've got to go up to Manchester to a similar conference. A body like the Commission can't predict the future direction and functionality of technology, but we want to help to create the right policy and regulatory environment for such innovation to thrive. First, though, I do need to say that maintenance will only get us so far when it comes to our own transport networks. Supercharging productivity will require some strategic enhancements to the system. The Commission believes that in the next road funding settlement, investment needs to be rebalanced towards the North and Midlands and at least match current funding levels of 27 billion in total. And on rail, we need an urgent and comprehensive review of projects in the North and the Midlands. We must ensure that future schemes address the strategic capacity and connectivity needs that the previous integrated rail plan, which included the northern leg of HS2, of course, was designed to meet. Now, you might be forgiven for thinking, well, this all sounds very well, John, but didn't you know that we're about to have an election where everything will be thrown up in the air? Well, to that I say, I'm not sure that the next government, of whatever colour, will have any choice but to pull all the levers at their disposal to unlock investment in infrastructure if they want to increase the UK's productivity. And that is, of course, as much about encouraging private investment as it is about opening public spending taps. We believe the public investment levels are going to have to go up to 40 billion a year at least over the next 20 years. So despite the fiscal context, I think there is reason to be hopeful that any new government will want to strain every sinew to make the UK a more attractive place to invest. Well, how do they do that? Well, firstly, the deceptively simple answer is for the new government to set out its policy stall for regional growth, climate adaptation, and then crucially, stick to it. The only trick in attracting investment from overseas is about getting the balance of risk and return right and providing policy certainty over a reasonable medium to long-term time frame. There are other factors, of course, like speeding up the planning system for major projects and ensuring the regulatory system is fair and proportionate. But the potential is huge. It is, for example, estimated that between 135,000 and 730,000 net new jobs could be required in low-carbon sectors by 2030. I guess the range of those two numbers tells you just how difficult some of these predictions are. But all we know for certain is that there are going to be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of new jobs required in the near future. And many of these, probably the majority, are going to be in SMEs. To help the people, the connected catapult was set up to propel and requires long-term policy certainty. With that clarity, the clouds part to reveal a pipeline of inevitable projects around which innovators can plan, invest in skills, and develop long-term relationships with their suppliers. As you might expect me to say, the package of recommendations that the Commission has developed, if implemented, would help to provide this long-term certainty. Government is duty-bound to respond to our assessment within 12 months of its publication. In this instance, I suspect we might have to wait a little longer. In the meantime, if the things which I have mentioned today sound sensible to you, and if you have the means to express your support through your political engagement or on social media, then please do so. In return, I hope the Catapult, its members and its followers know that the Commission stands ready to work together on these areas of mutual interest. As with many of the projects which are going to be discussed over the course of today, it's only through open collaboration that progress is going to be made. So in that spirit, may I wish you all the very best for today, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.